I'm Connor Old, and welcome to a bonus emergency episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, the second week in a row in which we have multiple episodes a week. This episode, I'm going to be breaking down my thoughts on every single category from the recently announced Oscar shortlist this morning, some snubs, some surprises, what this all means for the Oscar races, not only the ones that were shortlisted, but also what we can tell from the nominations and the shortlist that can tell us about other races and the strength of overall movies. But if you're new to the channel, what I do every single week is predict a different Oscar category, but I've done pretty much all the Oscar categories at this point. On Monday, I'll be talking about Best Documentary, and that will sort of conclude the predicting aspect of this channel so far. In the future, we're just going to be looking at predictions of other award shows, reactions to other award shows, and then finally, will be the Thursday or the Friday before the Tuesday morning that we have the Oscar nominations. I'm going to be giving my final predictions, but if you want to hear my thoughts on some of these more technical categories, international feature, visual effects, sound, score, I've already done full episodes just on that category where I take, 7 to 10 minutes breaking down the category, giving my predictions. Some of the predictions are a little bit irrelevant now because we've had a couple of snubs in some of these categories, but I am very proud to say that almost all of my predictions from those videos that have happened, 3-4 weeks ago are still accurate today. So if you want to go back, check those out as well. A lot of my points still hold up, but that's why you're watching this video, because you're interested in the shortlist, the technical categories, visual effects. You're a real Oscar fan. A lot of people will watch and think about the best acting categories and best picture, and those are fun to think about and to root for as well. But we also know the people that are really caring about the shortlist. This is the technical categories. These are the categories that if you get these right, you'll get a higher score overall. It's the reason why we get top 5%, top 10% on Gold Derby in terms of predictions every single year, because we do as much diligent work on these below the line categories as we do for above the line. And just by watching this video and hearing some of my thoughts, I think you're going to be doing the same. So I appreciate you coming along. And as always, I always want to create an awesome film-loving, Oscar-loving community here. So please feel free to comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on your predictions. Were you surprised by anything? Or are you personally rooting for something? That's fun and allowed too. But without further ado, let's jump into my thoughts. So I've just got some of my notes here. I'm going to go category by category and break down some of the snubs or surprises or none at all. So starting off with the best documentary category, not a lot of huge surprises. I haven't given my final predictions, but all of my possible contenders and predictions did end up making the short list. There were some movies, Kokomo City, which got a lot of precursors, which was a bit of a surprise for it not to get nominated. The Mission was another movie that I think some people had predicted, a National Geographic movie, but it hadn't been showing up at a lot of precursors, so I didn't think that was going to get in. So for the most part, no big, huge shock or surprise. All of the main contenders, at least the ones that I'm looking at from the precursors that I'm analyzing, Cinema Eye, IDA, Indie Spirits, all of them made it in. The important thing to note, I think, though, is that 2 documentaries, 20 Days of Miracle and 4 Daughters, both of which I'm predicting to get in for Best Documentary Feature, by the way. Both of them also got nominated for Best International Feature, and we've seen this trend in the past few years where Honeyland was a documentary that also got nominated in Best International Feature. Flea was a documentary that also got nominated in Best International Feature that also got nominated in Best Animated Feature. So if the Academy, they're not afraid to really nominate it in both documentary and international feature. That used to be not a true statement. You used to either get into one or the other category, but now that documentaries can also apply for Best International Feature and contend in that category, we are seeing quite a bit of overlap. So I wouldn't be surprised if a movie like 20 Days in Miracle, which is a strong Best Documentary Feature category, also sort of snuck in and got a nomination for Best International Feature. Watch out for that. That's something to note. The actual Best International Feature category itself, no surprises. All of my possible contenders and really the big types of movies got in, so no real shocks there. Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Golda got in, which nobody really had predicted except for myself on my makeup and hairstyling video where it was 100 to 1 odds. I thought I was going to get in, no one else did. That's why you come to this channel, to get some of those long shots and accurately predict them. The big surprise that missed here was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That was a prediction of mine, but actually it did not get in for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, so unfortunately that movie's not going to get in for there, even though it has all this amazing makeup and all these different characters They just unfortunately weren't as interested. A couple of movies that I didn't expect to get in, but I think other people did expect to get in, missed, which was Barbie and The Color Purple. I know on Gold Derby, Barbie was number 2. I never had it in my predictions. I never had it in my possible contenders. Priscilla was another movie that sort of kind of got a bit of a snub, but you have to keep in mind that this is the best makeup in award, essentially. It's makeup and hairstyling, but for the most part they wore prosthetics, they wore transformations because of that, which is why they didn't nominate Color Purple or Barbie or Priscilla, because there's not a lot of makeup going on, there's not a lot of prosthetics going on in those movies. They're mostly hairstyling movies and great at doing that, but they missed out because of that. So keep that in mind when you're making your predictions. This Gold surprise nomination really wasn't a surprise if you're paying attention to the types of movies that they like to nominate, which is makeup forward, not hairstyling forward. That's another sign, another sort of sign of proof towards that fact. And then also a Naiad miss, which was a little bit interesting as well. Then the Best Sound category, I thought it was notable to note that Ferrari got nominated for Best Sound. Not a lot of people had predicted that. I did in my video, it got in. Same thing with Napoleon. My sort of support of Napoleon has paid off. I think a lot of people didn't think Napoleon was going to get in for any nominations because they were sort of biased by the critical reviews. But the technical categories, it got in, it contends for Best Sound. It got in for visual effects. It got in for makeup. So I've been a supporter of this movie as a serious Oscar contender for these technical categories. Once again, that showed up. So interesting to note that Napoleon did get in for sound. Color Purple, another missing out on sound. So, I think the idea of it being a Best Picture contender has sort of officially gone out the window. I think its chances are pretty minimal now to get in for Best Picture. That's not to say it won't get in for something like Danielle Brooks for Best Supporting Actress, but it does hurt its overall chances. And then no nominations for Society of the Snow, which we thought was going to be a long shot, but somewhat notable. And then no nomination for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, a little bit notable there too. Best Score was also not super surprising, but some notable facts. The Color Purple did get in here, so it didn't get snubbed like it did in some of the other categories like makeup, like sound. So that's notable. Also, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse did get in. Daniel Pemberton hasn't done as well with the Oscars in the past, but the fact that he got in for a shortlist, I think, is important. Society of the Snow also got in here. So even if it missed it out, Society of the Snow and Spider-Man, they missed out on the Best Sound category. They did get in for Best Score, so I don't think their chances were hurt from these nominations. The real surprise, I guess, would be no Alexander Desplat nomination, in that he didn't qualify for Asteroid City or Naiad. And, this was a guy who was getting nominated pretty much every year in the 2010s, and then doesn't get in for French Dispatch, doesn't get in for Midnight Sky, doesn't get in for Pinocchio, snubbed all those times, even though he got all the precursors. It's interesting to see that the Oscars are maybe not as interested in Desplat's scores as they were during the 2010s. That was something that I predicted during that video, not having him in, and it seems like that's going to be the same case here. And then, other surprises being Past Lives not getting in. We sort of saw this coming because it didn't get in some of the other awards groups like Critics' Choice Awards, which I mentioned was a little bit of a disappointment, but was expected. So that movie's chances have been decreased a little bit. Zone of Interest did get in, which was fascinating to see. Not by me, because I predicted it in my Best Score predictions. No one had it in their predictions, by the way, when I made that video. Of course, it makes the shortlist, because of course it does. Best Picture potential, Michael Levy, who did the score, who's been nominated in the past. Lots of things going for that film, so vindicated once again by it getting on the shortlist. And then also The Holdovers getting in for Best Score was a little bit of a surprise. I don't think a lot of people had that getting in, but just another sign that The Holdovers is a strong movie. Do I think it's going to get in for Best Score and get a nomination? No. But the fact that it made the shortlist, I think, is indicative of people's overall appreciation for the film. Then Best Song, we had all 3 Barbie songs get shortlisted, as well as both the Color Purple songs. So that was interesting. So even though the Color Purple sort of disappointed, and it's been disappointing for weeks now in terms of nominations, in terms of it getting shortlisted, both its songs got in, so that's, I think, indicative that its chances are not dead, particularly for the Best Original Song category. The debate this year would be which Diane Warren song would get in. Would it be from Flamin' Hot, or would it be from 80 for Brady? 80 for Brady, the song got snubbed, so it looks like it's going to be from Flamin' Hot. I'm still a believer in Diane Warren. She gets nominated every year, so I think Flamin' Hot will get nominated. Interesting to see that American Symphony got a nomination for Best Song. It also got in for Best Score. It also got in for Best Documentary Feature. Documentary was expected, but the fact that it got in for Song and Score, I think, is indicative to its overall chances of getting a nomination and maybe even a win in Best Documentary Feature. Watch out for that movie, American Symphony, from Netflix. No Wish, that was surprising just because it's still a Disney musical, so I was sort of betting on the fact that maybe it could get in for Best Song. It did not, so I'm really doubting its chances for even something like Best Animated Feature because of its sort of debacle in terms of the poor box office, poor critical reviews, and Disney's sort of overall poor year. Wish doesn't seem like the strongest animated movie to get in for that category, and it's definitely not getting in for Best Original Song. And then also interesting to see that Wonka didn't get in for Best Song. I didn't think it was going to get nominated, but I thought maybe one of its songs would get shortlisted. It also didn't get nominated for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, which was also a little bit of a disappointment too. So when we're looking at the categories of Best Production Design or Best Costume Design, maybe we'll hold back. Maybe we don't include Wonka in those predictions, because the fact that it didn't get in some of these other categories, even though they weren't going to necessarily get nominated, the fact that it didn't get shortlisted amongst 15 nominees is a little bit concerning for its overall health as a movie that can get into some other categories. And then, of course, the big surprise, I guess, for a lot of people is Peaches, the Jack Black song from Super Mario, did not even make the shortlist for Best Original Song. I didn't think it was going to get in at the Oscars, but it is a little disappointing, the fact that there's no hope at all that we could see Jack Black perform at the Oscars. I think everybody really would have loved that, so a little disappointing that we didn't get it in there. Then Best Visual Effects, interesting to see the older franchises, blockbuster franchises get in. Indiana Jones got in, as well as got in for Best Score, so that movie's definitely not dead. Mission Impossible, I didn't think it was going to get in for Best Visual Effects because none in the entire series hadn't got nominated in this category, so the fact that it showed up here means it could be a real contender. Napoleon, like I said, which I predicted. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse got in here, which was really important. I mentioned on my video just 3-4 days ago now that there's never been a computer-generated animated film, like a Pixar movie or something that's not stop motion. There's never been an animated film that got nominated for Best Visual Effects that's been computer-generated, so the fact that it got nominated for got shortlisted, for Best Visual Effects. This could be the first year where it got nominated, but let's not forget Soul also got shortlisted for Best Visual Effects, and it did not get nominated for the Oscars, so maybe it will be the same instance here. But the fact that it even got shortlisted, I think, is a testament to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And then also No Dungeons and Dragons, which was a possible contender that I really wasn't a big believer in, but I know it was highly ranked on Gold Derby for a possible nomination, but that didn't get in, so a little bit of a surprise there for some people. So then, in terms of overall winners and losers, starting off with the winners, Killers of the Flower Moon, I think, overperformed, getting in for makeup, which I didn't think a lot of people predicted it would get in. That's a strong sign. Getting in for Best Original Song, not necessarily because I believe it's going to get nominated for those categories, maybe Best Makeup, but just more so the fact that it got shortlisted in categories that it wasn't supposed to get shortlisted in. What does that tell us? It tells us that it's a stronger overall movie. So like a category like Best Lead Actress, maybe Lily Gladstone has more support than what we initially thought. Because remember, the branches vote on who's going to get nominated, but when it comes to the actual winners, that's the entire Academy. They have to vote on every single category. So it helps to note that the songwriting branch really appreciates Killers of the Flower Moon enough to give it a nomination, so that when they're going to vote for the Best Lead Actress, maybe they'll put their support towards a Lily Gladstone. Things like that give us a little bit of insight. American Symphony, I mentioned, fascinating to see that it got 2 nominations in score and song that I didn't think it was going to get in. That helps chances for Best Documentary Feature in terms of a nomination. I had already predicted it, but maybe it's the frontrunner to even win now. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 showed up in a couple of places. That was a bit of a winner. Napoleon, like I mentioned, a winner for some, but not necessarily a winner for me. I had already predicted it for Best Visual Effects. I had already predicted it for Best Sound, a consideration, even or something like Best Production Design. I see it as a movie like a First Man or a Babylon, a movie that doesn't get in for Best Picture, but it has enough technical appreciation that it gets into some of these smaller technical categories. So Napoleon, for some people, was maybe a bit of a surprise. Not me. Definitely, though, a winner from the shortlists. And then my final winner, I think, is Ferrari. It got in for Best Makeup and Hairstyling and Best Sound. I think we're trying to figure out what kind of an Oscar contender is Ferrari. Back in, October, November, I was talking about how Penelope Cruz could still get a nomination for Best Supporting Actress. I still think she can. I think the fact that Ferrari is being released later has top of mind awareness. The fact that it got in for Best Sound, which I had already predicted, but not a lot of people had. The fact that I got in for Best Sound maybe helps the chances for getting in for Best Editing, which we don't have a shortlist for, but is a good sign. The fact that it overperformed, getting a nomination for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, is also indicative of maybe a nomination in one of the acting categories, because there's a direct correlation between a makeup and hairstyling nomination and a Best Acting nomination, which is why a movie like Maestro got nominated for Best Makeup and Hairstyling and probably will win, because it has its two actors, Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan, as contenders in their respective categories of Best Lead Actor and Best Lead Actress. And then I'm going to go with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Listen, it didn't get in for Best Sound, but I don't think a lot of people were predicting it for Best Sound. It did get in for Visual Effects, which is a good sign, because we know there's bias against animated movies, so the fact that it even made the shortlist is a positive. And then it got in for Best Score, and Daniel Pemberton has never been nominated before. So I think the fact that it did sort of overperform in a couple of categories, even though it missed out on something like Best Sound, I still think it's the front runner to win for Best Animated Feature. And then my losers, my first one being Wonka, disappointing, not getting in for makeup, not getting in for Best Song, so I think we may have to adjust our predictions. I never had it in Best Production Design, but maybe I'll have to take it out of Best Costume Design. I'm not necessarily going to do that just yet, but I'll have to consider it at the very least. Nyad missed out on Best Makeup and Best Score. Those are two categories that I could have easily gotten in on, so I'm concerned about that movie's overall chances. I have already dropped Jodie Foster from my 5 in terms of Best Supporting Actress predictions. Seems like a movie that's peaked a little bit too early and hasn't been resonating as much as we thought, so Jodie Foster probably out in Best Supporting Actress. Annette Bening, I think, definitely out in the Best Lead Actress category, so this may be a movie that gets no nominations. Nyad maybe blanked out, we'll have to see. Then another loser I had from the shortlist, unfortunately, was The Color Purple. Even though it got both of its original songs in, it missed out on Best Makeup and Hairstyling, it missed out on Best Sound. Now, I wasn't necessarily predicting it in those categories, but they were highly ranked on Gold Derby. It should have at least gotten maybe a shortlist. So I think not only is The Color Purple unlikely to get nominated for Best Picture, I also think this hurts an actress like Danielle Brooks in terms of potentially getting a win for The Color Purple, when, you know, overall her chances in these technical categories, The Color Purple maybe just isn't as beloved as what we thought it would be. So not a Best Picture contender. I still think Danielle Brooks gets in. I still think maybe a song, maybe another category, but most likely only 1 or 2 nominations versus what we had thought in the past, which could have been a 4, 5, 6 nominated movie. Seems like it's just not resonating. And then maybe a loser that would make some people mad, but I think Barbie was a bit of a loser from the shortlist. It didn't get in for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, which a lot of people thought it would get in. So the fact that it didn't make the shortlist I thought was at least surprising. It didn't get in for Best Visual Effects, which, listen, not a lot of people had predicted it, but it was in the sort of top 7 or 8 on Gold Derby. There were some people predicting it to go into their top 5. It didn't make the shortlist for Visual Effects. Now, it did get in for Best Sound, which I don't think it was supposed to, so there is a little bit of a redeeming factor, but there were a couple of categories there where if it was really a big, strong Best Picture contender, like some people think it is, like a potential Best Picture winner, it should have overperformed in those categories, like Oppenheimer got in everywhere, like Maestro got in everywhere it needed to be, like Poor Things got everywhere it not needed to be, Killers of the Flower Moon overperformed, Holdovers overperformed. These are all the top Best Picture contenders. So the fact that Barbie disappointed in some of these categories indicates to me that maybe it's not the Best Picture juggernaut that some people think it is, and maybe that hurts even something like a Greta Gerwig director nomination, something to keep in mind. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the shortlist snubs and surprises. Stay tuned to Monday, where I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the Best Documentary category, and I'm going to be doing a whole breakdown of that and all the precursors that matters. That's a really tough one to predict every year, so I've been doing a lot of research, and I'm really starting to feel confident in my predictions, so I can't wait to show you guys that one. But that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, stay tuned.